Hi everyone, welcome to Techie World. So today I'll take you through the concept of method overloading in Java. So let's straight away jump to the topic. Method overloading in Java is also known as static polymorphism or compile time polymorphism or early binding. So let us see these terms individually. So you can see there is a term called polymorphism. There are actually two types of polymorphism available in Java. One is static polymorphism, which is also known as comparative polymorphism, and the second one is runtime polymorphism, which is also known as dynamic polymorphism. Okay, I'll make a separate video on the type of polymorphism and what is polymorphism in Java. For this video, let's focus on the method overloading. Now you are seeing another term called early binding. So what is early binding? Though there is a two terms here called early binding and late binding. I'll make a separate video for these two, but just for sake of this video, let's have a brief look on early binding. Early binding is basically a situation where method calls is resolved at the compile time itself. Okay. In other words, we can say during the early binding, the compiler determines which method to call based on the method name and its parameter provided at the time of method call itself. Okay. So when you connect this early binding with the method overloading, what happens in method overloading? In method overloading, the compiler decides which method to call based on the provided argument at the compile time itself. That's why binding is slightly related to the method overloading in Java. So method overloading in Java is actually a concept which allows us to define multiple methods in a class with the same name but different method parameters. Okay. Now you may have a confusion that if the method names will be same, how will Java know? How will JVM know which method you are calling? So in the previous statement, I said same method name but different method parameters. So JVM identifies the method based on the parameter that you provide while calling the method. Okay. Now let's jump to the some of the theoretical parts about method overloading that we have in the Java. What is method overloading in Java? The very first point is the same. The method overloading in Java refers to the ability to define multiple methods in a class with the same name but different parameters. Okay, which means that let us say you have a method m in a class A and the method parameter for that method m is int a. Now let us say you are overloading that method in the same class and the method name will be same m, but the parameter can be double d or a string str or something. Okay, that's what first point means. The second point is method overloading allows you to provide different ways to use method based on the different input types or quantities, making your code more flexible and readable. We explain this point. Let us understand you have written a method m1 and that method m1 is taking two arguments, int a and int b, and it is returning a plus b. I mean addition of these two numbers. Let us say you got a requirement to return or to compute the addition of three numbers. What we are going to do? You can overload this method m1. You can add three parameters there, that is int a, int b, and int c, and in the return type you can return a plus b plus c. That's what this second point means. Now let's move to the third point. That is Java uses method parameter to determine which method to execute. That's what I told you in the very first slide. Let us say you are defining a method with the same name but different parameters. How Java will know which method you are calling? So it will identify the method based on the method parameter that you are providing while calling the methods. Okay. The last point about method overloading is the return type of the method doesn't matter here. Okay. In method overriding, return type matters, but in method overloading, return type doesn't matter. So you may have a void return type in the m method, and in the overloaded method you may have a different return type. Okay, that we will see in the code when I'll explain this. Okay, now there are certain rules that we need to follow while performing the overloading in Java. What are those rules? Let's see. The very first rule about method overloading is the method name must be same. Okay, the very first rule about method overloading is method name must be same. What is the second rule? The second rule about method overloading is method parameter must be different, and it can be different in a different in I mean in the different terms. First, it can be of different order. Let's say in the first method you have int a and double d as a method parameter. In the overloaded method, you can have double d and int a as a method parameter. Okay, it can have a different type of method parameter. So let us say in a method m, you have written a method parameter is int a. In the overloaded method, it can be string s. Okay, and the third is number of parameters. So I explained to you in the previous slide that if you want to return the addition of two numbers, you can have two parameters. If you want to, return the addition of three numbers, you can have three parameters, right? So that's what the first point is. Number of parameters. You can have different number of parameters in the method parameter. Okay. No. Types of parameter. That's what I explained you. It can be int in the method, and in the overloaded method, it can be a string or double or anything. Okay. And the third point is order of parameter. Order of parameter can be different. In the first method, you may have int a and double d, and in the second parameter, you may have double a and int b. Okay. Now let's have a look on this pseudocode to understand this better. And as I already told you that method return type doesn't matter in the method overloading. Now let us do some hands-on and try to understand this pseudocode. There are three different scenario actually I explained you, right? Number of parameter can be different, type of parameter can be different, and order of parameter can be different. So let's first have a look on number of parameter. In number of parameter, you can say you have a class A where you have a method m1, which is taking method argument as int a and int b, and the purpose of this method is to print addition of these two numbers. Okay. Now let us say you have a method m1 again, and you have three argument now. That is int p, int q, int r. And the purpose of this method m1 is to return, not print, return p plus q plus r. That is also addition of these three numbers. Now, if you observe carefully, I have intentionally written this code in the method m1. I am printing this in the method m1, overloaded method m1. I am returning the addition, which simply means this method is overloaded and return type doesn't matter in the overloading. Okay. Now let's move to the second, that is type of parameter. In type of parameter, let us say you have class A. Under class A, you have method m1, and the purpose of this method m1 is same as in the previous, to print a plus b. Now let us say you are overloading this method, and now the argument is long and double. And the purpose of this overloaded method is to return the addition of these two numbers. Okay. Now let us move to the order of parameter. So let us say here also you have a class A and method m1. You have int a and double b as a method argument. Now the purpose of this method is to print a plus b. Now how order of parameter can be different? Let us say you are overloading this method m1 again in the class, and what you are doing, you are just reversing the order of the method arguments. Okay, and the purpose of this overloaded method is to return a plus b. Okay, so in this way you can achieve method overloading by following the rules. Let's jump to the code to understand how this works. Okay, so in method overloading we have three scenario. First is number of parameter can be different. Okay, second is type of parameter can be different, right? And third is order of parameter can be different. So let's explore first one first. Okay. So to explore the first one, I'll write a class A, and in this class A, I'll be writing a method M1. Okay. So let us say I'll make it void M1. Okay. And in this method M1, I'll be taking two arguments, int A and int B. And the purpose of this method is to print A plus B. Okay. Now let us say I am trying to overload this method M1, okay, with the more number of parameters, right? We are exploring the first one. Number of parameter can be different. So let us say what I'm going to do is I'll make it int just to clarify that return type doesn't matter in overloading. And now what I'll do, int A, comma, int B, comma, int C as a parameter. Sorry, int C as a parameter. And the purpose of this method is to return A plus B plus C. Okay. Now let's call this method here. So since these are instance method, it is not a static method. So we need to create the object of class A to call this method. So what I'll do, new A dot, let's call M1. Okay. Now which one to call? Let us say you provided 10 and 20. Which method it will call actually? It will call the method which have just two argument, int and int. Okay. Let's run this class. So if you see here, you got 30, 10 plus 20. Now let us say you are calling this method with three parameters, 10, 20 and 30, or rather 40. Okay. And let's run this class. Now this method will be invoked. Okay. And you will get a return of 10 plus 20 plus 30. Since we are not printing this, so let me print this. Okay. And just for the sake of your understanding, I'll take it here. Okay. And for now, I'll comment this. Okay. Let's see. So you can see you are printing 70 because it is now in this situation when you are providing three argument, it is actually calling this method, overloaded method, not the actual method that we had earlier. Okay. So that's all about number of parameter can be different in a overloaded method. Now let us talk about the types of parameter. Okay. For that, let's write a separate class for that. Okay. So let us say there is a class B. What it actually doing? Let's say we have method M2 here. And let's write the return type method M2. And in method M2, we have two parameters, int A and int B. And the purpose of this method is to print A minus B. Okay. Now let us say you have a requirement, okay, where you don't want to subtract to integer, but rather the requirement is to subtract to float value, right? So what I'll do, I'll just overload this method, okay, and to overload this method, what we need to write, we'll write same void m2, and here the requirement is let's make it float f1 comma float f2. Okay, and the purpose of this method is to add and print these two float values. Okay, so we'll try to print this two values, that is f1 plus f2. Okay, now let us comment this out for now and we'll move to this code. Here if you see, you have a class B and you have the instance method in the class B. So what you need to do, you need to create the object of class B to test this code. So we'll make a object of class B, new B dot, and then you have this method M2 call. Okay, let us say you're calling this method with the 10 or rather, since it is big now, 20 and 10. If you run this code, what are you going to get? 20 minus 10 must be 10. Okay. See, we're getting 10. Now, let us say there is a requirement. It is not 20, but rather 20.5 and 10.5. What are you going to get? You're still going to get 10.0. Let's run this. Okay, error exists. Why this error? Do you know? Because any float value will be taken as double until and unless you suffix f with the number. And you got f1 plus f2, that is 31.0. Now let's move to the third type, order of the parameter. To understand this, let us write another class, class C. In the class C, let us say we have a method M1 or rather M3. And in M3, we have int a, comma, double D as a parameter. And the purpose of this method is to print a plus D. Okay. Now, let's make it void because it is asking for the return type. Now, let us say you are trying to overload this method. I'll just copy this method only. And while overloading, what you're doing, you can see the error with the same name. But if you replace this with double and int, it won't give you any error. Okay. So this is overloaded method. Now let us try to call this method here. This method is also instance method. So we need to create the object for order of the parameter also. So let us create an object of class C, new C dot. Now you have this M3 method here, right? Now let us say first one is 10, that is an int, right? And then you have 10.0, that is double. Now what will happen if you print this? It will return you 20 because in the class C, if you see, you are returning a plus D, but it is calling this method. Okay, and rather than doing this, let's make it a minus D to avoid the confusion. Okay, so let us say you have this and you are getting 20. But what if you're going to call this M2 with the reverse? What is going to happen? Or rather, let's make it 10 only, 10.0. I made it 10.0 and 10. What will happen now? It should return 0.0, right? I can see 0.0, which means it is executing actually this M3 method. How it is identifying? It is identifying based on the method parameter that you are providing. Okay. So that's all for today. If you want this code and the notes shown in the video, please do comment your email ID and you will receive this within 24 hours. Also, I'll be posting more such informative video on this channel. If you found this video helpful, please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.